everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Lab 207 webcast. My name is Mr. Kite, and I'll be hanging out with you today as we continue on in our series about economics and sustainability. Topic for the day is going to be different perspectives and agencies. So as always, let me get you your objectives and we'll get going for the day. By the end of our time together, you should be able to compare and contrast differing environmental worldviews, describe the precautionary principle, and explain the purpose of several world agencies. So that's what we've got to talk about. Let's go ahead and get going. So first things first, by this point in your life, you probably recognize that everybody has a little bit different way of looking at the world, and that is known as your worldview. It's a basic set of assumptions that you operate out of on a day-to-day basis. Now, with the environment, this is no different. If you ask anybody how they are going to deal with the environment or how they believe the environment should be dealt with, they're probably going to give you something that fits into one of these four worldviews over here. So I'm going to run through them real quick. First one is the anthropocentric worldview. Anthro is human, so this is the human-centered worldview. Basic idea behind this worldview is that the world is there for our use, the resources that are there for our use, and a lot of people with this worldview believe in free markets very strongly, so they believe that free markets will reduce or mitigate any damage that could be caused. But anthropocentric, the world is here for our use, humans can do what we want with the world. Then there's the stewardship perspective, which is kind of related to the anthropocentric worldview in that it believes that humans do have the right to use the world for our benefit, but it also says that humans have an ethical responsibility to be good managers of the earth. So we can use the earth, but we're responsible for managing it in a way that makes sure that it is here for future generations. Then there's the biocentric worldview, which is life-centered. Bio is life. And this worldview says that all living things have equal value, but humans have the right to use resources. So the first two worldviews believe that humans have more value than the rest of the living world. This one says that we are on equal footing with all other living things, but we do still have the right to use the resources around us in a way that is sustainable. And then the most, environmentally centered worldview is the ecocentric worldview, and that one says all living things have equal value and humans have no right to interfere with living systems. So this one just says that we are part of the living world and we do not have the right to disturb the world around us. So if you look down these worldviews, they move from being very human-centered up at the top all the way down to being environmentally centered down at the bottom. And most people are going to fall somewhere in one of these worldviews. The reason I bring these up is we're going to talk about some organizations and agencies in a second, and those organizations and agencies often put together laws that are a combination of some of these worldviews. These agencies also operate usually in some sort of relation to the precautionary principle. Now, I understand that this picture right here is really fuzzy, but hopefully you can kind of see what's going on. It was a good illustration of an idea called the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle basically says that if it cannot be proven that a thing is not dangerous, then it should not be used. So a way of stating this easily is, let's say that a lab has just created a new chemical that can be used to clean up oil spills. The precautionary principle would say that unless a person or a scientist can absolutely prove that that chemical used for cleaning up oil spills will not harm the environment, will not harm humans, will not harm other fish, we should not use that chemical because it could do some damage. The other way of looking at the world is the opposite of the precautionary principle, and it's called the innocent until proven guilty principle, and that basically says that you should take that chemical, go ahead and use it, and then later on down the road, if we find that it's problematic or causes people to get ill or whatever, then don't use it anymore. So it's kind of like jump in, just go in the name of progress. Precautionary principle says that we should be really cautious with things that we don't understand and not use them until we do fully understand them. So based on where you are, your government and the organizations that are around you are going to have a different view. America operates off of a innocent until proven guilty model in that most scientific developments in America are implemented into the world before they are proven to be completely safe. The basic idea is that progress is most important. In Europe, they operate off of the precautionary principle because they believe that things should be proven to be safe before they are actually used. Now, out of these worldviews and these principles, you get many different organizations that are important to both people and the environment. So most of you probably heard of the United Nations. The United Nations was formed after World War II, and the purpose of the United Nations was to promote peace and through dialogue around the world. So it started out with 50 countries in 1945 when it was started, and now I believe there's like 160 or 180 or 90 countries involved. And the UN basically brings countries together to talk with one another rather than fight wars. The United Nations is important because they started several other organizations which have a lot to do with either the environment or human health or both. So I'm going to run through 4 of those. There's the United Nations Environmental Program, which the purpose of this program is to gather information, conduct research, assess problems, and negotiate treaties all related to the environment. So this is the branch of the United Nations that is concerned with the environment. They're responsible for putting together treaties, which are big agreements between countries regarding the environment. Some examples of treaties are the CITES agreement, which basically says that you cannot buy, sell, or ship or trade in black market animals. They work on the Montreal Protocol, which says that countries are not allowed to manufacture chemicals that deplete the ozone layer. So they're in charge of that stuff and making sure that rules and treaties that are agreed to are actually enforced. There is the World Bank, which is the technical and financial assistance for developing countries. So countries that do not necessarily have financial resources to become a developed nation can get money from the World Bank. World Bank makes loans to those countries to help them progress forward, and the idea being that as they progress forward, the quality of life for people in those countries will get a lot better. Now, some people do criticize the World Bank because often their development efforts do not take into account the environment or environmental impact, but they work mostly with helping countries to become more developed. There's a World Health Organization, which you've probably heard of. Their mission is to improve human health by monitoring and assessing health trends and providing assistance. They are around the world and they're all concerned about the health of the world. They are involved when there's a disaster that might make people sick. They work on fighting AIDS and other epidemics around the world, so their focus is human health. And then finally, there's the United Nations Development Program. They advocate change that will help people obtain a better life through development. So the World Bank is all financial. That is all about helping countries financially. United Nations advocates for any change that will help a country to become more developed with the goal of improving the lives of the people living in those countries. A couple other things as we wrap up today. I want to talk about a culture shift that happened in the 1970s. So first in the 1960s, there was a series of environmental disasters around America that caused people to start thinking about the environment for the first time and starting to understand, oh wait, humans do actually have an impact on our environment. And when the environment is harmed, humans are harmed as well. So out of this cultural movement that started in the 1960s, 1970, April 22nd, 1970, we had the first Earth Day, which is kind of recognized as the beginning of environmental consciousness. It's the first time that people and governments really started to look at the fact that, oh, humans are tied to the environment and the environment is tied to humans. If we harm the environment, we also harm ourselves. And this was marked with Earth Day, which happens in April every single year. But I wanted to put this out here so that you recognize that this Earth Day in 1970 is recognized as the beginning of the environmental movement. And finishing off for today, one American agency that you need to know about is the Environmental Protection Agency. They are U.S. government. They are in charge of overseeing all of our government's efforts related to the environment. So that could be writing regulations that protect the environment. It could be enforcing laws. It could be educating the public. All of that falls under the umbrella of the Environmental Protection Agency. So I know that was a lot of like, I don't know, here's one agency, here's another agency, here's another agency, but you need to be aware of all of them because they all play a significant role in the health of people and the health of the earth. So that's what I got for today. Thanks for joining us on the Lab 207 webcast. My name is Mr. Kite, and we'll see you again.